Well, as the old saying goes, all good things must come to an end. Yeah, for those that don't know, the Please Don't Toy Me Miss Nagatoro manga has officially ended. I guess you can say it's Nagatoro over.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So yeah, the Nagatoro manga is now over, and as much as I truly do love the series, I'm not really all that sad or depressed at the fact that it's now over. Probably because I've had over a month to really let it sink in that the manga was ending. So I'm not sad, but I'm not particularly happy either. It's more like I'm looking on the bright side of things. Like, from what I understand, the manga isn't ending because of a lack of popularity. The author ended the manga on their own accord. They did what they wanted to with these characters and told the story they wanted to tell, and now they're going to end it. So I'm happy the author isn't getting forced to prolong the manga when they don't want to, because a lot of times when that happened, the quality of the manga really starts to go down. I think that's what happened with Prison School. Don't quote me on that. Again, looking on the bright side of things, the ending was good, not particularly the way that I would have ended it, but we can touch on that later. Point I'm trying to make is that it seems like a lot of manga authors really like to drop the ball when it comes to the ending of their manga. But Nanashi, the author, didn't do that with Nagatoro. The ending is good, just not the best. Also, the ending didn't feel rushed. That seems to be a problem with a lot of manga. So with that all said, what happens in the final chapter of Nagatoro? How do I feel? What are my thoughts on it? Well, before we get into that, let's go ahead and quickly recap the previous chapter because it leads into the final chapter. And quick side note, you guys peep the shirt, it's from konobei.com. I'm not sponsored, I just know I'm gonna get asked about it, and plus I like their stuff. Well, the previous chapter does a montage / time skip through the rest of Senpai's senior year. We see that he took an entrance exam to try to get into Tokyo University, and he passed. Nagatoro ends up asking him, hey, what's your dream? And this is when he realizes that he doesn't particularly have one. Like, what does he want to do with his life? Does he want to be a manga artist, a designer? Like, what? We end up learning that Nagatoro volunteered to represent the underclassmen and give a farewell speech to the seniors. So when Senpai's class is asked who wants to give the graduation speech representing the seniors, Senpai volunteers. And that's where the chapter ends. I think I mentioned this in the last video, but I do find it a little bit weird that Nagatoro and Senpai are the ones that are giving the graduation speech because, you know, normally it would be the class president that's giving the graduation speech, but you know, whatever. Let's get into what happens in the final chapter of Don't Toy Me Miss Nagatoro. So the final chapter picks up right where the last one left off, with Senpai volunteering to do the speech, and then he immediately regrets it. He has no clue what he wants to say. The thing is, he's not doing the speech because he feels strongly about his fellow classmates. No, his motivation is to share a special moment with his girlfriend. So graduation day comes and oh, would you look at that? There's Senpai's dad. I believe this is the first time we get to see what he looks like. Well, we do see the back of his head all the way back in chapter 71, but otherwise, no, we've never really seen him. So Nagatoro walks up and starts giving her speech. And y'all, I gave like the biggest eye roll when I saw how her speech was starting out. It was just so generic and by the book. Then she starts just saying what's on her mind, ad-libbing. I was like, okay, now that's the Nagatoro I know. She's like, do y'all have dreams? Because I have one, and it's to participate in the Olympics. I'm glad we finally know what Nagatoro's dream is, you know, what her goal is. I believe I mentioned this in another video, but this is a topic that's been on my mind for a while. Like, I knew she liked judo, but didn't know she would take it as far as trying to make a career out of it. But that's only like half her dream. Her full dream is that she wants to be with the people closest to her, try her hardest, and become a judo world medalist. The main point of her speech is that whether or not you have a dream yet, believe in yourself and do your best. Not the greatest speech in the world, but very Nagatoro. But the important thing is that Senpai liked it. It brought him to tears. So when Nagatoro is done with her speech, Senpai stands up and she's confused. I was like, oh snap, he didn't tell her that he was doing a speech? I like that. I like how this is a surprise. So his speech starts off just like Nagatoro's, very by the book, but I expect that from Senpai. But then he pulls a Nagatoro. He stops using his speech notes and just says what's on his mind, what's on his heart. His speech boils down to life can be scary, but it can also be fun. That he's gained the courage to take on life and wants to go through life with the person that's most precious to him. So his speech was a lot more personal, but I feel like people could still relate to it. We cut to what I believe to be a few months later. Senpai has come back from college to visit Nagatoro. He goes to say hi to Hana, who is now the president of the art club. And I love how she's still his hype man, like how she's hyping him up to the other club members. A little while later, Nagatoro shows up and she looks a bit different. I think it's just because in this scene, it looks like her hair got cut short. Short-haired Nagatoro does make for a good-looking character design. Anyway, she's like, hey, it's been a while, I'll model for you. So he pulls out his tools and gets to sketching. The end. So when it comes to the final chapter of Don't Toy Me Miss Nagatoro, honestly, I'm a bit lukewarm about it. Like, it didn't really invoke any, emotions from me. It wasn't bad, it was good, it was just, unique to say the least. Like, I can't think of another manga that ends with the two main leads giving graduation speeches to each other. But maybe there's a reason for that. Again, it's unique, but not particularly the way I feel like the manga should have ended, and I believe a lot of people agree with me. Like, I feel like the second half of chapter 152 would have made for a better ending than the speech we got in chapter 154. For those that don't remember, what happens in chapter 152 is that they end up going to the festival, they see all the side characters, Nagatoro ends up telling Senpai her true feelings, and then they kiss underneath the fireworks. I feel like that would have made for a better cap to the series. Like, if I was able to rearrange things, I would have it to where the graduation happens first, and then the stuff at the festival happens. You know what? Let me give my honest thoughts on the final chapter, chapter 154. First off, I wasn't expecting the speech to take up a majority of the chapter. I was thinking half, max, and then move on to something different. I was like, man, is it going to take up the entire chapter? Like I mentioned before, the speeches were a unique way to end the manga. The speech highlights how much Senpai has grown as a character, but I would have much rather had the cliche time skip ending. You know, like where we get to see where all the side characters ended up in life, and then see our two main leads living a happy life or getting married. It's cliche, but it would have worked for Nagatoro's ending. I think it's poetic that the manga ends with Senpai drawing Nagatoro. I like that. But their interaction was kind of weird. Like Nagatoro being like, hey, since it's been a while, I'll model for you, completely unprompted. Like, it would have flowed better and made a lot more sense if Senpai said, oh man, I'm feeling a bit nostalgic now that I'm back in the club room. And then have Nagatoro be like, oh, I'm feeling kind of nostalgic too, why don't you go ahead and draw me as your model? Like, that would have made more sense. Also, the high five as a greeting was kind of weird. Like, when you haven't seen your boyfriend or girlfriend in a while, you normally greet them with a hug or a kiss, not a high five. That's something you do with friends. That interaction had people confused. They're like, are they still dating? Are they still a couple? Why are they high-fiving? I'm a little disappointed we still don't know what Senpai's goal in life is. I'm extremely happy that we know Nagatoro's, which is to go to the Olympics, but what's Senpai's? So overall, the way I feel about the final chapter is, again, I'm kind of lukewarm on it. It's not bad, but it could have been better. I would have much rather had the cliche time skip ending over these graduation speeches. But how do other people feel about the final chapter? That it's not the best ending, but it does its job. Yeah, that's basically how I feel also. That it was a bit underwhelming. That chapters 153 and 154 kind of just feel like the epilogue, and chapter 152 was the true ending. And I couldn't agree more. That perfectly summarizes how I feel about the final chapter. Someone else mentioned that they didn't like how long the speech lasted. Yeah, it took up a little too much of the chapter in my opinion. I saw that Chibi, a popular anime YouTuber, drop his video on the finale titled Nagatoro Ended, and people say it's the worst manga of all time. And I was like,
Shut the fuck up in 2024! You sound dumb.
People are still hating on Nagatoro after all this time? Yes, the first few chapters were kind of wild, but the rest of the manga is a solid rom-com, a sweet, wholesome romance. But it turned out to be just people on Twitter being people on Twitter, like what do you expect? So how do I feel about the manga being over in general? I'm content, I'm satisfied. I would have loved to see another 10 to 50 chapters because I feel like there's just so much being left on the table by the manga ending right here. Whether it be college life, marriage life, whatever. But with that said, again, I'm happy that the author got to end the manga on their own terms and they're not being forced to do anything they don't want to. So now that the manga has ended, how do I feel about the Nagatoro series in general? It's one of, if not my favorite romance comedy manga. Specifically manga. When it comes to anime, I'm not too sure what's my favorite rom-com, but when it comes to manga, it's definitely Don't Toy Me Miss Nagatoro. Are there moments when Nagatoro takes things a little too far, specifically in the beginning of the manga? Yes, but you'd be surprised how often that didn't happen and how quickly Nanashi really reeled in Nagatoro so that the story could really focus on, a romance comedy. It has some really good character development. Senpai kind of starts off as a loner, kind of keeps to himself, he's kind of skittish, and as time goes on, he grows a bit of a backbone, becomes more confident, more outspoken, he becomes more sure of himself. And seeing Senpai change makes Nagatoro want to change. Like in the beginning, she was just kind of going with the flow, just kind of hanging around, not really doing anything. training. But seeing Senpai improve himself makes her want to do better. Like, she got back into judo because of Senpai, and now she has a dream to go to the Olympics. I thought the romance was great. It was a nice, normal progression. Overall, it's a fantastic series, and I can't wait to see what Nanashi does next. And hey, the manga isn't completely over yet. We are getting an epilogue with the release of the final chapter, which I believe is on August 7th. It could be anything, so if there's enough material in the epilogue, I'll do a full video on it. If not, I'll just make a YouTube short. So how do you guys feel about the final chapter that the manga is officially over? How do you feel about the series in general? Please leave your comments down below. And if you liked this video, like the video. And if you like me, subscribe to me. And as always, this has been Broken, and I'll catch y'all next time.